The Committee of the Whole of Imina 36 na Legislature Guahan is called to order. I would like to acknowledge the presence in the session hall, the gallery, and the public hearing room of the island's dignitaries, including our Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Chief Justice, Senators, judicial members, Mayor's Council, our Consular Corps, former governors, former speakers, and former vice speakers, and former senators. I extend my regrets to the many other island dignitaries who our session hall was unable to accommodate due to public health safety guidelines. Please rise as we begin with the presentation of colors by the Guam National Guard. Oh, my apologies. Please rise while our Sergeant of Arms welcomes our guests of honor.
Madam Speaker, the Honorable Michael F. Q. San Nicolas, Guam's delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives, escorted by his wife Catherine and his children Caleb and Caitlin.
Please remain standing as we begin with the presentation of colors by the Guam National Guard. I call upon Charles Mamashar Katbagan to sing the national anthem and Tricia Marie Charfris to sing the Guam hymn.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave the land and of the free, and the home of the brave.
Fanogit samoru Puritanota Kontai matunon yagitoru ilugor Para para gloria abiba isla sin parat para gloria abiba isla sin parat toru I tempo I paz para ita dangin I langit na bendition Conjai piligru na fansa fuham Zeus brutahis langom Conjai piligru na fansa fuham Zeus brutahis langom.
For the recitation of Inifresi, will Senator St. Augustine kindly lead us?
Inifresi. Ginimas takilu gi hinesoku. Imas takilum gi corazonhu. Zanimas figu nani na sinyahu. Hu ofrecen maisazu by hu protehi za defendi I hinengi, I cultura, I linguaje, I airi, I hanum zani tanot samoru. Ni ire sakku dirensun ginin azur stata. Esti o fitma gihilu Biblia. Zani benderahu I banderan guahan.
Please remain standing for a benediction. I call upon Reverend Father Paul Goffigan, Legislative Chaplain, to deliver the benediction.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. O God of goodness and grace, come down from the heavens and invade our hearts and minds with your spirit of Inathamaulik, and place us in a right and just disposition as we prepare ourselves to listen attentively as our Honorable Congressman Michael F.Q. Sandiclis delivers his address to this honorable assembly and to our island of Guam. May your spirit of Inathamaulik grace us with the gifts of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. May your spirit of Inathamaulik take what our honorable congressman has to offer as a message of unity, not division, progression, not stagnation, creativity, not lifelessness, collective benefit, not private interests. As we listen in charity, may we also respond in the same charity that your Son has commanded us to have for one another, so that in all that we say and do, we do it with that spirit that has been so embedded in each of us, the spirit of Inathamaulik. Amen.
Please be seated. It's now my honor to call upon the Honorable Michael F.Q. Sandiclis, Guam delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives, to present the annual Congressional Address.
Mandated under public law to deliver addresses before this House and before the people of Guam. I am the youngest and also the only one that doesn't know how to use a teleprompter. Madam Speaker, Therese Terlahi, Senators of Mina 36 na Legislatura ng Guahan, Governor Leon Guerrero, Lieutenant Governor Tenorio, Chief Justice Carbolito, Chief Judge Francis Tydinko Gatewood, Public Auditor B.J. Cruz, our dignitaries who have served prior, leaders of our Department of Defense partners, our allies of the Diplomatic Corps, and most importantly, the people of Guam. Hafaday, buenos dias, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Kasalelye, Ali, Yakwe, Nesora Nim, Joe na Chimeo, Ohayo gozaimasu, Gaudsa, and good morning. I would like to begin by giving special recognition to my wife, Catherine Nicholas, and my two kids, Caleb and Caitlin, who are with me here today. I love you all so much, and on behalf of the people of Guam, I would like to thank you for all the time and support you give Daddy to be able to do his job as their congressman. I would further like to thank Speaker Therese Terlahi for a gracious accommodation of the timing of our congressional address this year. I really wanted my children to be able to attend so they could see firsthand why their dad had to work late so many nights and be away more than I would have liked to. Daddy and Mommy love you so much, Caleb and KK. When we last delivered our congressional address in January of 2020, over a year and a half ago, the realities of the pandemic we continue to endure today weren't even in the realm of the imaginable. On March 15, 2020, the Guam Department of Public Health confirmed the first 3 cases of COVID-19 on the island. And since then, our people have endured the tragedy of further lives lost, livelihoods lost, and the glaring outlook of a future uncertain. Everything changed. The island shut down, schools were closed, tourism evaporated, jobs and incomes were halted. We couldn't spend time with our families, visit our sick, or even bury our dead. Our traditions, holidays, and celebrations for some of life's greatest milestones were lost. 139 of our loved ones were lost. My family lost our beloved Monsignor David I.A. Kitiguat, who blessed my last congressional address with his holiness and whose spirit we celebrate among us today. He would have been sitting right next to us. At the onset, we knew that we did not have the luxury of excuses. Many times over many decades, our island was swept up in regional, national, and international circumstances that created challenges in our community, from the Asian economic crisis in the late 90s, to the wars in the Middle East, the bursting of the dot-com bubble, SARS, and 9/11. In each of these circumstances, our realities were adversely impacted, and our relief disproportionately so. We knew COVID-19 would far surpass the cumulative impact of each of these occurrences. We knew our island circumstances suffered during those times would suffer exponentially during these. We knew that we could not hide behind the small territory excuse or the we can't vote excuse and look our people in the eye with a plastic smile saying we did our best as families suffered. We knew we had to deliver. Fortunately, we were positioned to do so. In our membership on the Financial Services Committee, we were uniquely placed to be one of only 5 committees actively involved in the development of relief packages. The Armed Services Committee was not one of them. Not only was the Financial Services Committee instrumental and consequential in final package development and passage, our fellow Financial Service Committee members were positioned throughout the Congress, further enhancing our reach and scope of all our committee colleagues. I want to specifically thank our Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, Majority Leader Hoyer, Majority Whip Clyburn, Financial Services Chairwoman Maxine Waters for unflinchingly supporting the inclusion of territories in all relief packages. Our fellow colleagues on the Financial Services Committee, also chairs of their own respective committees, further extended their hands. From Chairwoman Maloney, who chairs the Oversight and Reform Committee that delivered the $600 million to our local government, to Chairwoman Velasquez, who chairs the Small Business Committee that structured PPP relief, to Chairman Scott, who chairs the Agricultural Committee that delivered food aid and assistance. Time and again, these leaders heard our simple request for inclusion, and they held the line to ensure it was so in their respective capacities and beyond. Our caucuses played a pivotal role as well, hosting meetings and discussions that brought cabinet secretaries, congressional leadership, and subject matter experts directly before us to hear our concerns, suggestions, and answer our questions. I would like to recognize Chairman Dr. Raul Ruiz, Chair of the Hispanic Caucus, for his direct efforts that helped us to restore reinstating unemployment for those who had reduced working hours, and for Hispanic brothers and sisters in the caucus who stood firmly on our behalf. Thanks are in order as well to Chairwoman Judy Chu of the Congressional Asia-Pacific American Caucus for bringing Guam to the forefront in our meetings with the administration and Vice President Harris, all of which are advocacy opportunities for our key issues relevant to Guam. Not only were our efforts successful in placing us equitably into all relief packages, we were further blessed to be able to specify carve-outs that help to ensure our smaller district was not pushed out by larger demand. We carved out funding specific to smaller businesses, smaller lending institutions, and smaller communities, ensuring that agencies had to focus administrative resources and larger funding pools into areas like ours. The results and the outcomes speak for themselves. Guam was fully included in all 6 packages passed into law. Public Law 116-123, Public Law 116-127, Public Law 116-136, Public Law 116-139, Public Law 116-260, and Public Law 117-2. As of June of this year, Guam has received over $2.5 billion in federal pandemic aid. Of this amount, $1.8 billion was paid in the form of 95 different grants, with over $1 billion supporting over 28,000 unemployed workers, mostly in our private sector, and 13,000 workers to this very day, also mostly in our private sector, through the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. Guam was the single largest recipient of federal pandemic unemployment support, and we are only one of 3 jurisdictions in the entire country that had our unemployment costs 100% federally funded. Our economic circumstances were further supported with 4,837 total federal pandemic loans that helped to carry over thousands of our businesses and mitigate further unemployment, with PPP and EIDL loans direct to our private sector constituting the bulk of $373 million in forgivable loan support. An additional $375 million found its way to 1,482 recipients as direct payments to both the public and private sector, with grants direct to businesses upwards of $10,000 each, and millions of federal dollars in food aid passing through our local agencies, supporting thousands of our families with commodity distributions and SNAP enhancements. Over $117 million reached thousands of our families in the form of 3 different stimulus payments over the course of the pandemic. Over $500 million has been made available for our education system, giving our public schools, our private schools, our community college, and our university critical resources to provide much-needed tuition reimbursements, enhance the safety of our learning environments, and build learning capacity with modernization, tools, and technology. Over $150 million went to reinforce our healthcare system, both public and private. Tens of millions of dollars have gone to support our airline industry, our airport, our homeless, other agencies in our government, and others in need of housing and rental assistance. And in just a few days, the country will be rolling out the enhanced child tax credit secured in the American Rescue Plan. From July 15 to the end of the year, every single family earning up to $150,000 for a couple or $112,000 for a single parent will receive $250 a month per child between the ages of 6 and 17, and $300 a month per child for those who are 6 years old and below. If you filed your taxes for 2019 or 2020, or if you received a stimulus check, you should be automatically enrolled, and the Department of Revenue and Taxation, as usual, will be working very hard to establish a process for those who need assistance and for those who remain non-filers. On top of all of this, we have $600 million for our local government to deploy for pandemic recovery, with the ability to use such resources to compensate essential workers in both the public and private sector, support economic reopening, and further close gaps exacerbated by the pandemic that have existed for years. All of these resources have prevented our island at large from suffering catastrophic generational loss, not only in direct support into the pockets of our people and onto the tables of our families, but in the coffers of our government, which enjoyed robust federally related tax revenues in excess of $800 million, generating enough operational surplus to retire a multi-year accumulated deficit in the midst of an island shut down in a pandemic. Additionally, in the midst of a pandemic, in an economy far from recovery, we have actually seen our bond ratings improve. Quite remarkable. The job of your congressional office did not stop with securing pandemic resources. In response to the overwhelming concern of our community, we mobilized 24-hour operations to field calls and inquiries, to provide reassurances and clarity, and to connect the needs of the people with the resources to find relief. I personally worked till the sun came up for months, responding to messages, and our district office team collectively handled over 12,000 calls and queries and continue to do so to fill accessibility gaps so that people could have someone to talk to and help them. I would like to recognize my district team, Ms. Jennifer Wynn, Mr. Kenny Leon Guerrero, Mr. Benji Perez, Mr. Julian Bordalio, Ms. Tricia Chafaris, Ms. Nelta Ayen, Ms. Mario Sakayan, Ms. Vanessa Carizo, and Mr. Joe Crisostomo for their unceasing efforts. And on our DC team, Ms. Tinota Mori and Mr. Elidio Pinheiro also fielded calls that found their way all the way to the East Coast as well. And Mr. Tomas Cavo, who worked tirelessly to produce pieces and press releases providing information to our people as quickly as we could pump them out. But if there is anything truly extraordinary to recognize in the midst of this pandemic, it is the people of Guam. In the face of so much uncertainty, with fear and death and frustration absolute realities, it was the people of Guam who stood courageously in the breach. Medical professionals, public safety professionals, our National Guard, bankers, truck drivers, retail workers, mom and pop operators, port workers, gas station attendants, and every other essential worker out there showed up and put their lives and the lives of the families on the line to keep our island going. Teachers adapted with technologies, students adjusted, and families adjusted so that they could keep learning somehow. Educators became food distributors, and soldiers became vaccinators. Laid-off workers reached out to former co-workers to help them find their way. Whole Facebook communities sprung up with people helping people on where to go, what to ask, and what to do to get the relief that they needed. Competitors came together as advocates for their industries. Families, unsure if they will have the resources they need tomorrow, reached into their pockets and into their pantries to help people they didn't even know that needed them today. There was no hoarding, no looting, no chaos. Lines would stretch for miles, and yet they were orderly, considerate, and compassionate. And as an example to the country and to the world, our people answered the call for vaccination so overwhelmingly, supply barely kept up with demand. So if there is one thing all of the leaders in this room, including myself, need to take away from all of this, it is the fact that our people can do the impossible. And if we just do our duty to make the resources they need available and provide the services they require of us reliably, there is nothing that can hold back this island of Guam. As consuming as the pandemic response has been, it has not afforded us the luxury of ignoring the other work that must be done. Your congressional office continues to make progress in our Department of Defense and Veteran Affairs initiatives. First, we were able to effectively navigate a complex amendment into the National Defense Authorization Act to insert language for Guam to be able to avail of H-2B labor for our civilian project needs. This particular amendment required the unanimous bipartisan approval of 3 separate committees, and then the Rules Committee, each of which could have halted this in its tracks. It is now public law, and I would like to recognize the Guam Chamber of Commerce in general and the Armed Services Committee of the Guam Chamber in particular for their advocacy on this issue. And John Thomas Brown especially, who contributed his expertise in artfully crafting the language to ensure its conformity. Fiscal year 2020 and 2021 has seen a combined $823 million in Department of Defense spending on island, and we anticipate an additional $814 million in fiscal year 2022 alone, a cumulative total of over $1.6 billion in Guam Department of Defense investment, which includes ongoing military realignment commitments and $118 million for the Missile Defense Agency Pacific Deterrence Initiative, a furtherance of our advocacy for an Aegis Ashore or equivalent missile defense capability on Guam. Of particular note, I would like to highlight that we have brought to the Armed Services Committee leadership the desire for us to expand our Guam Air National Guard to include flight capabilities. And this has been very well received on a bipartisan basis, with the ranking member himself taking an interest in seeing this materialize. We are committed to bringing flight to our Air National Guard, and we'll be working towards that end with the progress we have made at the leadership level. We further hope we can ensure advocacy from our Guam Air Force partners who will benefit from our enhanced support capabilities. And speaking of our National Guard, on behalf of the Congress of the United States, we would further like to extend our thanks for our Guam sons and daughters volunteering to serve in securing the nation's capital earlier this year. Their service was exemplary, and in their honor, we have requested official United States flags flown over our capital for each of them. I would like to take a moment to specifically showcase a very special promotion ceremony your Congressional office was able to facilitate under the leadership of Captain Italic, Captain Campbell, and Chief McDonald, for Private First Class Ignacio, Private First Class Silverio, and Sergeant Cruz in the heart of our nation's capital in the rotunda at the very center of Washington, D.C.
David and giving to Jasmar Silverio. You are promoted to the grade of rank of Private First Class, D3. The date of rank was December 2020 or December 24 January. Signed PJH Catholic Manual. Ready? Let's give them a round of applause. Attention to orders. Order number 924, 965. Specialist Nicole Cruz, you are promoted to the grade of rank of Sergeant E5, the date of rank of 10 January 2021. Signed, Lamin Rubino Manny. let her talk really quick, I just want to give a brief synopsis background of Sergeant Cruz. So she came to battalion in 2017. So she was about to ETS. She wanted to try something new. So she came from Winter Clip to try battalion out. Unheard of, right? Nobody ever volunteers to come to battalion. But Specialist Cruz, Sergeant Cruz, has been #1 on the EPS and her MOS for about 3 years straight. So this is long overdue. And it's great that it fell into place when we were able to promote her out here in the nation's capital. But she is, if you know Sergeant Cruz, she is an exceptional soldier. She puts 150% in everything she does. And I expect nothing less of you. But a little more now, a little more in your chest. I'm very proud of you. And I know you do. Okay. So go ahead and speak.
All good things, all good things.
You're treating tonight. If you say great words and make good decisions.
I just want to say thank you for everyone who's here. I know you guys didn't have a choice, but oh well. I don't think like Ma'am said, it was long overdue, but I'm glad that it happened today because it's no greater honor than being pinned in the nation's capital. I wish my family were here, but you guys are my family. Thank you again, and thank you, sir, so much. It's an honor for you to be my Thank you so much.
A round of applause.
Make good choices. You promoted sergeant. Congratulations. The 2 private first class. Congratulations. There's plenty more for you guys to achieve. Right? This is just the beginning. You just getting into the NCO Corps. Okay, there's a lot more up there. Not what you gotta do to get hired. That goes for everyone else. There's still a lot more to go. You need to catch up to me. I got nowhere else to go. So I made it there already, and you guys will have that same good feeling that I did when I get to make that your goal and you want to achieve it. You guys will be very successful. All right. You guys have a wonderful day.
Attention.
Our island and our people are so proud, and I have to say that has to be one of the most humbling ceremonial honors I've ever had in all of my years as your elected public servant. Thank you so much for the opportunity. The courage of our National Guard to answer the call every time, the courage of our sons and daughters who have served, the courage of our Gold Star families who have lost, and the courage of our very own who made the ultimate sacrifice are the examples we must honor and emulate in our own courage to take on the cause to protect and defend the universal right to freedom. With the United States bringing home our troops from Afghanistan, there is a need for us to provision for those who have aided them. Our Afghan allies aren't just our friends who have helped keep all of us safe today by helping our troops. They are our ambassadors to the friends of freedom we will need to keep us safe tomorrow. Let us welcome them not as refugees, but as the ambassadors and dignitaries that they are. The example of courage in defense of freedom set by our people has been so expressed throughout the Congress and the administration by your congressional office. We have asked that our Afghan allies receive the vaccinations they need to keep us all safe, that they be provisioned securely for their safety, and that their final destination be facilitated expeditiously so as not to inadvertently overwhelm our local capacity, but let the message be heard loud and clear. Guam is a fortress of freedom. Her people, its defenders, our allies are our family, and on this island, we fight and we die for our family. I miss you, Henry. On the VA front, we are humbled to announce a substantial breakthrough in efforts to recognize the presence and use of Agent Orange dioxin on Guam. H.R. 3317 in the 116th Congress and H.R. 3368 in the current 117th Congress were both bipartisan initiatives we led alongside our Republican partner, Representative Gus Bilirakis, to recognize Agent Orange exposure of veterans who served on Guam. Today, we can confirm that our language has been included in the larger Veterans Affairs Committee legislation, H.R. 3967, the Honoring Our Pact Act, a comprehensive package that encompasses years of work to address veterans who are suffering from toxic exposure. As part of a larger committee initiative, we anticipate smooth and timely progress and hope to see this enacted before the end of the calendar year. I would like to formally recognize the advocacy of some good people instrumental to the cause, namely Commander John Wells, Brian Moyer, the Agent Orange Survivors of Guam organization, and the Kilpatrick family, most especially the late Lonnie Kilpatrick, who was the namesake of the original pieces of legislation, a veteran leader who pushed for this until his death, who inspired thousands to take on the cause, and who died from the exposure and made it his dying wish that his suffering would not be in vain, that we would make it count, and that outcome is on the horizon. On March 18, 2020, Guam's historic Medicaid inequity was dramatically improved through the passage of Public Law 116-127, with an increase in our federal matching rates from 55% to 83%, saving us tens of millions of dollars in healthcare costs and enhancing our ability to provide care. This was further buttressed by increasing the pool of Medicaid funding available from $18 million to $130 million, over 7 times more, granting us the funds to provide care to 7 more people for every 1 we were previously. And our Medicaid relief did not stop there, as we co-sponsored legislation with our Hispanic caucus colleague, Representative Tony Cardenas, on the Energy and Commerce Committee, that resulted in the passage of Public Law 116-270 on December 27, 2020. Extending Medicaid eligibility to our COFA migrants, something we have not seen since the mid-90s. Over 14,000 people on Guam, many of whom previously were dependent on indigent funding that left many of them with few healthcare options and greater cost burdens on our emergency services at Guam Memorial Hospital. Today, we are working to extend that relief, these Medicaid improvements, and are pleased to see recent headlines announcing COFA eligibility for Medicaid that brings additional relief to our healthcare system and improves the healthcare circumstances of our brothers and sisters who have made Guam their second home. Governor, thank you so much for making sure that happened and for getting it done in a timely fashion. The work continues to secure our Medicaid matching and cap progress as we work on extending these enhancements into a new normal, and look forward to doing so with the support of Chairman Frank Pallone and Subcommittee Chairwoman Ana Eshu, both of whom are fully on board to that end. As part of the American Rescue Plan, we were also able to secure full federal reimbursement for our earned income tax credit, alleviating an approximate $60 million annual burden on our general fund revenues and further helping to raise our credit outlook in the midst of a pandemic. This funding is annual and ongoing, not a one-time thing. So we will see permanent improvement in our general fund that will help us fill the gaps between cash and appropriations, which should see tax refunds paid out faster at a rate than ever before. And I think that we're seeing that today. I believe that our tax refund payouts are a lot faster this year than they have been in years previous. I would like to thank Chairman Richie Neal and the Ways and Means Committee for making time during their busy schedules to field our calls advocating for this permanent remedy to our EITC. I look forward to working with them in the future to further remedy our supplemental security income circumstances in the months ahead. While these revenue enhancements will improve the financial position of our island, it is not the government that grows the economy. Your congressional office fully understands the needs for meaningful economic diversification, mobilization, and access to markets. Alarmingly, in attempts to facilitate constituent requests for aid in their exports to our Asian markets, our office found that Guam is not included in the free trade agreements established by the United States between either Japan or Korea, despite the fact that such agreements were negotiated within the last decade. As a result, Guam originated exports into either of these markets and to any other markets in which we are not included in U.S. free trade agreements do not enjoy the lower negotiated tariffs between either of the two countries and the United States, resulting in our exports being tariffed at higher world market rates. We found this to be unacceptable, and as a result are in active engagement with the U.S. International Trade Authority and the U.S. Department of Commerce to address this. Our findings thus far have been a paradoxical blend of disappointment, hope, and intrigue. First, it was made plain that attempts to amend existing trade agreements on an itemized basis, specifically to address the inclusion of Guam, would be surprisingly impractical. A multi-agency response will be necessary not only within the United States, but within the countries we wish to engage, and initiating such bilateral action and incurring the necessary associated costs and time commitments for a present-day, nearly non-existent export environment such as ours would not be feasible. To that end, our office pressed for ensuring that the oversights of the past that left us out of the trade agreements in the present were not repeated in the future. The need to include Guam in future trade agreement language of the United States should be self-evident, and our circumstances have been elevated to the Secretary and Trade Representative levels in the Biden administration so that any movement towards a Trans-Pacific Partnership or any similar bilateral or multilateral trade regime would not exclude our territory inadvertently or otherwise. Intriguingly, we took the opportunity to posit the question: if Guam is not included in these U.S. trade agreements, and if the reason for excluding Guam from these trade agreements is because our port is considered outside of the U.S. customs zone, is there anything in the law prohibiting Guam from negotiating our own trade agreements, specific to our exclusionary customs zone? Surely, if our export circumstances are too inconsequential to warrant amendments in current agreements, then perhaps it will be likewise inconsequential for us to establish bilateral trade terms on our own. Interestingly, from a trade perspective, we were informed that the law was silent on whether or not Guam, being outside of the U.S. customs zone, could negotiate its own trade agreements. There was no trade law expressly prohibiting it. I then asked if I should advise my governor to contact the Prime Minister of Japan and the President of Korea to express an interest in beginning such negotiations. Our queries have caused a flurry of excitement among the U.S. International Trade Authority and the U.S. Department of Commerce legal divisions, as these have never been explored or tested before, with one senior subject matter expert with decades of service saying he's so excited he feels like he is back in graduate school. Intrigue aside, Guam must either be included in U.S. trade agreements or be given an avenue to establish trade agreements on our own, rather than being left to default world market trade parameters that we are unable to address and that are detrimental to our ability to establish export-oriented industry. The work continues in this regard, and your congressional office is on top of it. Tangible to our local market, over the next 3 years, the Guam Economic Development Authority will have over $55 million to deploy directly in support of our local businesses, with funding we secured in the Financial Services Committee for the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This funding amount is quadruple prior allotments, and we have further supported GIDA by connecting them with expertise to maximize the strategic deployment of these funds. I would like to recognize GITA Administrator Mel Mendiola and First Lady Joanne Camacho, who works in GITA, for their active engagement with your congressional office regarding this opportunity. And we are excited to anticipate the creation of the first ever federally funded equity capital operation in the Guam Economic Development Authority that will enable direct federal investments into local companies by purchasing their stock with federal funds. Not only will these resources provide beneficiary companies with the means to grow their operations, it will also expand the role of GITA by giving them direct experience in facilitating equity capital transactions that we can graduate into a local stock market where local businesses and local investors can directly transact. Such capability is long overdue, as this would greatly enable our local businesses and entrepreneurs to establish and grow their operations with the support of local investment, unlocking hundreds of millions of dollars available for growth and modernizing our business financing environment similar to the rest of the country. We are further partnering with GITA to inject resources into the growth of our fishing industry by pursuing federal dollars to supplement locally committed funds to expand the scope and service capacity of the Guam Fishermen's Co-op. I would like to recognize Speaker Therese Terlahi and the 36th Guam Legislature for extending their official support in our pursuit of these resources, and would like to, of course, thank Manny Duenas and Ken Flores and the members of the Guam Fishermen's Co-op for keeping the dream alive for decades in the face of so many challenges. We are looking for ways to also enhance our agricultural industry, particularly in the sustainable area of livestock, which has proven to be more resilient in weather conditions, more lucrative for producers, and beneficial in reducing meat prices for our consumers. It also adds to our food security needs, which is something that we must constantly work to address. In our engagement with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we found that Guam has 9 USDA meat processing facilities on island, but none of these are actual slaughterhouses. We have no facilities to bring locally raised meats into local supermarkets or onto local restaurant menus. We have engaged the U.S. Department of Agriculture to identify available federal grants to establish slaughterhouse capability on Guam, and they are ready to meet with any local commercial, government, or nonprofit interest seeking information to that end. Your congressional office is ready and eager to facilitate. Additionally, with the exorbitant cost of feed imports to maintain livestock inventory, our office has further engaged our Department of Defense partners on island to determine whether or not any DoD lands on Guam may be designated for grazing. We need the inventory for the slaughterhouse. The grazing rights will allow for us to raise that inventory at lower costs. I would like to recognize our new commander of Joint Region Marianas, Admiral Nicholson, for being receptive and determining feasibility of this request, and for making a meeting at our office being one of his first priorities upon assuming office. We look forward to working as closely with you, sir, as we did with Admiral Manoni. Thank you for your service. In conjunction, Madam Speaker, I would like to encourage Legislatura to also adopt legislation identifying suitable local government lands and making them available for grazing. Such programs exist federally, external from DoD, within the Federal Bureau of Land Management, providing a template for our local adoption, and doing so would support the development of livestock agriculture on Guam by making the raising of source products as cost-efficient as possible. In real time, as we speak, your congressional office is working diligently as the National Infrastructure Package works its way through the Congress. The INVEST Act, originating in the House and tracking for passage this week, contains specific provisions that will historically mobilize our community and economy. For our mass transit system, the Guam Regional Transit Authority will have the opportunity to exponentially grow our federally funded bus fleet, with a 200% increase in available formula bus grant funding at $5 billion nationally over 3 years. Additionally, our bus fleet will further grow with a 1,500% increase in zero-emissions bus grants, making another $4 billion nationally available, and competitive bus grant funding will also be in play for another $1.6 billion. Each of these grants will be intended to prioritize what we are calling transit deserts, where public transportation is limited, benefiting communities such as ours on a competitive basis. We further targeted our Guam mass transit system with a specific $20 million allocation for bus shelters throughout the island, purposely ensuring that we have more than enough funds to invest in bus shelter resources so that we can properly deliver on comfort, safety, convenience, and longevity necessary for sustained and regular use. These investments in a modern, comfortable, timely, and energy-efficient system will unlock lost economic potential by giving our people a means to get to work, to go to college, to peruse our local establishments without fear of being late or appearing disheveled, and will further enhance the ability for us to promote tourism-related activities throughout the island, rather than to just those areas that are limited to commercial bus services today. I would be remiss if I did not recognize GRT General Manager Selba Balta and his team, whose work in the agency has helped it emerge stronger than I have seen in years, and whose assistance in our office's efforts to secure these resources has been most instrumental. And again, Madam Speaker and Legislatura also transmitted the necessary language to support our efforts in securing these resources, and I wish to again extend my thanks to this body. Beyond mass transit funding, we are looking to triple our federal highway funding in the INVEST Act, with specific carve-out language that will increase our federal territorial highway funding from $16.8 million a year to over $45 million a year, giving us the capacity to fix 3 times as many roads, remove 3 times as many potholes, and improve 3 times as many road markings so we can actually see where lanes separate during evening and heavy rain conditions. We remain cautiously optimistic that the increases in the INVEST Act specific to our areas will be maintained as the infrastructure package continues to move forward, and we will apprise the community as figures and outlooks finalize. Madam Speaker, I am about 50 minutes into my remarks, and I still have not even covered most of the bills that we've actually introduced, so I will be succinct. H.R. 157, our first bill of the 117th Congress, mirrors my first bill of the 116th and seeks to secure supplemental security income for the people of Guam. The issue is currently being taken up as well by the Supreme Court with movement anticipated in October, and the Biden administration has signaled clearly that it would further support a legislative remedy absent a judicial one. We anticipate relatively rapid maturity of this issue over the next 9 months and are strategizing its achievement similar to how we engineered our EITC solution. H.R. 282 is a bill that will put our federal district court on equal footing with other national district courts by allowing retired federal judges to serve on a temporary as-needed basis. We are working with Senate counterparts to secure a companion bill and thus far have no objections from the House Judiciary Committee. H.R. 2899 is a reintroduction of our legislation in the 116th Congress to secure a National Heritage Area Study for Guam, which will bring in on average $500,000 in federal National Heritage Area site support for the various approved sites on Guam so identified and authorized. Imagine the support we can get from Menengun, for the Plaza de España, for Tinta and Faja, for all the different sites that are so meaningful to our people and so in such desperate need of financial resources to maintain and upgrade. This bill has been heard in the Natural Resources Committee along with nearly half a dozen similar bills just in the last few weeks. And in other jurisdictions and other colleagues, we are confident that ours will move forward as a package with this group. H.R. 3066 will clarify that cigarette tax enforcement on Guam is duly authorized federally, so the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms can step in once and for all and stop the flagrant cigarette tax evasion that has been going on. H.R. 3221 will authorize all new hires of the government of Guam to be enrolled into federal Social Security. We are working closely with the Committee of Jurisdiction to determine if there's a package we can attach this provision to in order to streamline its passage. This will be greatly helpful to our people. It will provide them with a social safety net that also includes COLA and survivor beneficiaries. Let's do this for the people of Guam. H.R. 3368 was initially discussed as our Agent Orange solution for our veterans. H.R. 3539, some may say it's not substantive, but I think it's always important for us to properly and federally recognize people of merit in our community who have served. This bill would designate the Hagatna Post Office facility or its successor as the Atanasio Taitano Perez Post Office. He was our first local postmaster. Recognizing the first Chamorro Postmaster of Guam with formalities and due diligence, passage is likely with unanimous consent after all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed with the committees. H.R. 4102 will create a process to identify and establish eligibility of Native Chamorro organizations for the purposes of receiving federal contracting preference similar to Native Hawaiian organizations and Native Alaskan corporations. We love our indigenous brothers and sisters, but when we have federal contracting opportunities, and they are, of course, rightfully able to avail of them, and they're coming to our island and our people are unable to rightfully avail of them, that is inequity that we must remedy. We're looking forward to moving this bill forward, and we're working closely with the chairwoman of the subcommittee to make it happen. We are in the final stages of introducing legislation to mandate priority line access in our United States post offices, not just on Guam, but throughout the country, for people with disabilities and senior citizens. I think that we may have not recognized, or it may not have been as obvious as it should have been before this pandemic, but it became glaring obvious to us today as lines became exacerbated because demand increased exponentially. Our senior citizens and our people with disabilities should not be waiting in those very long lines. We need to give them priority access, pandemic or no pandemic. And we are closely coordinating introduction of legislation to include Guam as an eligible recipient of federal funds for Radiation Exposure Compensation Act purposes. With the original House sponsor in the 116th Congress, now a United States Senator, Ben Ray Lujan, in the 117th Congress. We are working with his House successor, Teresa Leger Fernandez, to jointly introduce the measure to enhance our chances of success, and we are optimistic that this year will reflect more progress on the issue than ever before. I would like to recognize Sahara Defensor and Eric Oz Captain for their ongoing work in our policy division to move these items and our policy agenda forward, and further express my thanks to Matthew Stile and Christina George for their service and contributions during their time in this division within our office. Madam Speaker, I focused the bulk of my address before our legislatura today on the resources and opportunities we have for a very specific purpose. Our island is at an inflection point, emerging from the greatest danger our community has faced directly since World War II. Yet our greatest work is what lies before us. With federal funds and federal outcomes resulting in systemic budgetary gaps like EITC, Medicaid, and COFA Medicaid eligibility being filled, with our multi-year deficit being filled, with our debt ratings improving in a non-existent economy, with our primary tourism markets trending towards 60% and 80% vaccination rates within the next 4 to 6 months, and with $600 million in federal funds available for deployment, and other various federal investments we have outlined here today, we are strongly situated in the months and years ahead for a generational golden age of resources on our island not seen since the early 1990s. What we do with these resources is going to define where we go generations from now. The lessons of the past have taught us the harsh reality of succumbing to political appetites. They have taught us what happens when we make the next election more important than the next generation. This is neither the time for political patronage, nor is it the time to short-sightedly inflate the status quo. This is the time to learn the lessons taught to us by our people who stood in the breach these last 19 months, to think of their children and their grandchildren, our people who have proven during these pandemic circumstances that they are the ones who will do whatever is necessary for us to succeed if we just give them the resources to do so and provide the services they require of us reliably. We must fully fund education, health, and public safety as we have promised time and again to do, rather than try to find ways to scalp local funds because federal funds just so happen to be available. The computer science program should not be closing down. Healthcare agencies should not be asking for less when we all know they need more. And our police officers should not be undermanned and overwhelmed with drugs and crime. We must expand scholarship opportunities into fields and industries we want to attract so we can make economic diversification a reality from the grassroots up. We must tangibly reduce the cost of doing business on Guam and awaken from the regulatory permitting, processing, and timeline nightmares that kill new enterprises in their infancy on this island. We must close out our local legacy commitments and earn back the credibility from our people by resolving the Chamorro Land Trust, building the schools we say we are going to build year in and year out, and even just cutting the grass on the side of the road. There will not be another $600 million in the future. There is no more EITC or Medicaid gap to fill. We will not see a similar confluence of circumstances that will bring our credit ratings up and increase our debt ceiling capacity like we have today, which means that the people in this room, to include myself, if we screw this up, we screw it up permanently. We must restore our people's faith in this government by not expecting respect in the titles and positions we hold, or in doling out money and jobs to swell our pocket meetings of the lucky few, but in earning that respect and earning that presence in the real outcomes we deliver. Members of Legislatura, Governor Leon Guerrero, local leaders, this is a one-time opportunity. We cannot get it wrong. We have to get it right. I'd like to just beg a final indulgence. There's one more thing that I have to do, Madam Speaker. When I was going through all of this over the last few years, I prayed fervently. There were many times where I was so unsure, so afraid, and I prayed so much. And my covenant with the Lord was that I would make it be known that all of these things that we get, and any relief that He provides, and any help that He gets for us to be able to do our jobs or for us to be able to accomplish anything, we wanted to make sure that it be known that it was not us, but that it was Him. All glory and honor to you, Lord. Hallelujah and amen.
Thank you very much, Congressman San Nicolas. I'd now like to call upon the Reverend Father Paul Golfigan, Legislative Chaplain, to deliver the benediction. Please rise.
O God of the universe, we now ask you to pour forth your blessings upon all of us as we reflect upon the message delivered by the Honorable Michael F.Q. San Nicolas. Keep us safe as we go our separate ways and continue to inspire all our government leaders with your spirit of Inafamalik to collaborate all their efforts to work for the good of our people, especially as we continue to navigate through this pandemic and hopefully begin to see a brighter tomorrow with a semblance of normalcy. We ask you to grant our Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas a safe journey back to Washington, D.C., and may he always have Christ as his companion on all his journeys. Grant him faith, courage, and perseverance as he continues to work for the good of our island, and may he never falter in what he has been tasked to do. And may your spirit of Inafamalik bless all of us and keep us in his peace. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please be seated. Assistant Majority Leader, Legislative Secretary, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Siduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move that we rise from the Committee of the Whole and recess until 2 p.m. this afternoon.
Motion was made to rise from the Committee of the Whole and that we recess until 2 p.m. today. Are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries. There being none, this legislative session is in recess. In order to comply with social distancing guidelines, we will exit on both sides, row by row, as directed by the legislative staff. Siduous Masi, and thank you all for being here today.